I think that innovation is really making meaningful change to your products, your processes, even your organization, because you can innovate in your organization to bring really new value to your customers.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers. And in each of these episodes, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with different BPM practitioners, people that are putting business process management into practice each and every day in different organizations. And they're seeing amazing results, amazing value getting delivered to those organizations through BPM. And today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Lourdes Gonzalez. Now, Lourdes is the CEO and founder of Lulu Process Design Group. And Lourdes also works quite frequently with Roger Tregear, whom, if you've been following this podcast series, you may have seen Roger's episode, and currently is working with Roger to bring some BPM training to the US market. I'm very excited for this interview today. Lourdes, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Daniel. It is a pleasure for me to finally meet you, and thank you for this opportunity. Business process management is one of my biggest passions, so I'm happy and thrilled to be able to share my thoughts with you and your audience.
That's great. And I think what would be good to begin with, so that our audience has a bit of a grid or background or understanding of the work that you've been doing, maybe you can take us on a bit of a journey back to when you were first introduced to the topic of BPM, and then take us on a journey leading up to the work you're doing today.
Yeah, perfect. I'd be glad to. So it really started by trade. I'm an industrial engineer. So by being an industrial engineers, we're being trained to be system thinkers. So way back on my early years, way back then when I graduated, I had the privilege to be employed by one of the companies locally in Puerto Rico when I started there. And at that time, my professor from college also started in the company, and he became my manager. We did have the absolute privilege and journey and fun of implementing the first just-in-time production line in Puerto Rico,
Right.
in that manufacturing area. And by doing that, we had the opportunity to really engage with the executive team to understand what is it that we were going to do to delight our customers, which is one of the DNAs of our of the company that I used to work at that time. And by working backwards from understanding how we're going to delight our customers, developing and designing and deploying this production line, and really working close with the employees to develop the processes, understanding what they do, understanding what is it that we needed to do to make the line more efficient. So I did have the opportunity to really explore all the areas of what is called now BPM.
Right.
So as I continue working in different organizations and having that foundation that I have as an industrial engineer through the years, and now trying to learn, and I'm just a live learner. So going back then, from there to now, I've been studying the language, how things are called, but essentially they all came from a lot of the studies that I did and my industrial engineer. So it has been a very natural transition for me to continue doing the work of process design and process improvement.
Yes, great. And looking into that, I guess the uptake of BPM in various organizations, what has the uptake been like, and what are some of the challenges that you've seen organizations face when adopting BPM?
So in terms of challenges in Serve, I will say that the one of the things based on the teams that I have worked with, the mindset of the executive team goes a long way. So having the opportunity to work with different organizations at different levels, I think that you can start with BPM from the grounds up, but until you really tackle the mindset of the organizations and work with the executive team to help them and coach them and understand that the strategy that they have set for the organization and what they need to deliver to their customers really is enabled by business process. So trying to make that connection with the executive team and eventually as we continue working with on projects and showing that value that BPM brings to the organization, a little bit, just continue showing them the value that we can demonstrate, start changing the mindset. Also, along with the mindset, and part of that is the overall culture of the organization. So if the culture of the organization is really set in the mindset that this is the way that we do things, we're not going to change, then maybe there are other things that you need to address. But if the culture of the organization embrace change, then you have to just maybe work with individuals, groups, or individual employees to really bring them through the journey of creating the change and really overcoming all those changes.
That's great. And when you're talking about, I guess, getting the having the executive team on board, there would be people listening right now that they're in an organization where BPM hasn't been encouraged or it hasn't really been adopted. Maybe there's one person or a small team of people that have been tasked to understand and manage the business processes, but it really isn't given much time, effort, or energy or resources. How do you approach the executive team? What sort of things are they interested in? What sort of language do you need to use when pitching BPM to that senior level?
Yeah. So what I do is I always, either with teams or clients or different individuals, I like to meet the people where the people are. So try to understand in what stage of their BPM journey or not journey at all they are. And by understanding that, and of course, understanding specifically for the executive team, understanding the business environment, I like to approach them with the mindset of what are the things that they're worried about? What are the things that that keeping them awake? And then just really trying to make the connection between what are their priorities, what is keeping them awake at night, with what I can bring from the BPM field that can help them overcome those challenges. So, and then from there, just working with them, just really to develop a program that pragmatically and systematically can implement BPM to yield the results that they expect. So in a nutshell, I really, number one, try to just meet the organizations where the organizations are in their journey. And number two, really try to understand what are the critical things, like my old professor said, what are the 1, 2, 3 that we are worried about and that we need to tackle, and we'll start with those.
That's great. That's good. And I think what you were saying before about, going through change, if an organization is going through change, sometimes people can be very resistant to that. And maybe the process practitioners, the frontline employees, the ones that are actually going to be carrying out the change, or, if a process is improved, there is going to be a group of people whose daily tasks are going to change. And sometimes they're going to be resistant towards that, or they're going to, I guess, ask questions. Why does it need to change? This is the way I've always done it. I've done this for the last 5, 10 years or so. how do you include them in BPM? Because they're obviously, you know, whether they're in the call center or they're on the factory floor, they're not the ones that have been tasked to improve the processes, but you know that oftentimes they're in the best position to know what are the pain points, what are the problems, how can we improve this. So I guess how do you bring them along for that journey where they're not resistant, but they're actually very excited because they understand, oh, this is actually going to help me, this is going to make my job better.
Yeah, exactly. And you pick up in a couple of key things. So, so bringing people together, right? So, in BPM, when I approach and work with the teams, I approach it from different perspective. One perspective is really, of course, business BPM, right? So what is the work of process improvements that I need to do? But as you point out, the people side of the change is huge, right? And then you have, of course, you have the technology side. So in one of the things that I really hone and spend time doing is really getting my tools of organizational change management and really approaching the teams in that way. Of course, I'm not talking to them about the terminology of organizational change management, but that's what I'm doing. I try to put myself in their feet and try to understand what isn't it for me to change from the way that I'm doing things to the way that you want me to do things, and trying to understand from their side what isn't it for them in the change, and bringing them along to actually design the change, because I am going to help them understand that they know a lot about the pain points. I'm going to help them understand what good should be and what a process improvement should be. But at the end of the day, they are the ones that they're going to be executing. So it's very important to bring them along the journey and having them collaborating on that design. And mostly, sometimes I just haven't just really delegate one design, just to have them feel that I did this. So I did this, so I'm going to use it. So.
Yes, that's right. There's a sense of ownership when they've been part of the process, when they're the ones that identified the pain point or the problem, when they're the ones that have come up with part, if not all, of the solution. I think there's a sense of ownership there, and a sense of like, yes, this is helping my day to day, and it's also helping the organization deliver value to their customers, which is what it's all about in the end.
Exactly. I mean, keeping in mind that they are really narrow into their process, and you as a business process analyst, you're exposed to many situations. So you have a sense of the direction that you need to just guide the team. So you work with them to guide them without really telling them, this is the way that it should be. So let them navigate through that journey, so they can absorb how things are changing and what they need to do and what is it that they're doing it. And then the adoption definitely is going to be much better.
Yes. And I guess you're coming in from that that cross-functional view. You can see that wider perspective. If we do make a change to this process at this point, well, who else is that impacting? Who else is that affecting? It might be a great change for this individual, but what does that look? What does that mean overall? How does that affect things upstream or downstream? So I think it is good, obviously, to have that person that can take those suggestions and understand, well, what are the pain points, what are the problems, but then also how does that marry into the overall picture of the organization?
Exactly. And one diagram that I love to work with teams is the I-Go diagram. Just really trying to understand, work with the teams. And in many cases, I see I didn't know that that I needed this or that. So just having the brainstorm with them opens up a lot of discussion for the team. And then they start working, they start asking, okay, so I don't think that we're doing this pretty well. It's just like, I think that. So just bringing them through that journey, if they're not really if you're working with, for example, the government, some of the government agencies are not pretty mature in BPM. So organizations that really you need to bring them through that journey, there are different techniques that we have that we can use to work with them.
Yes, right. That's good. And I think out there are a lot of organizations actually that have been, in a sense, burnt by BPM, or whether it's been implemented poorly, whether they haven't had the right culture, whether they haven't had the executive level, that sponsorship, whether maybe there hasn't been, it hasn't tied into the strategic direction or the strategy of the organization. You know, I've heard many stories about organizations that have gone through the whole documentation phase, where it's taken 6, 12, 18 months to document the process, only for them to then ask the question, why did we do all of that? What was the purpose of that? Because there was no thought to what next, or what are we actually going to do with these processes once documented? Are we going to look for improvements? Are we going to look for changes? Are we going to look for areas of opportunity? So I think, I guess, one question that the executive level would have is, well, why BPM? Where's the value in BPM? What's the return on investment going to be? So do you have any, I guess, specific examples of cases where you've been working with an organization, you've implemented BPM, or maybe it's as, whether that's as simple as a small process tweak or change, up to radical innovation, where the organization did realize significant value?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of this year. So this year, 2020, and will continue 2021 will continue to be very challenging for us. So I had the privilege to be exposed to healthcare organizations through my board membership. So I do understand what happened behind the scenes. So for those organizations that have done some work on business process management already, and many other organizations, having done that and having spent the time on defining their business processes, in the case of the hospital, is really patient care, and a lot of that goes around that. So what I saw in this time last year and this year is that those and the other data point is that as I examine organizations through being a Baldrige examiner, I do understand what high performing organizations in healthcare are. So in these organizations that have done some work, rapid change it's been challenging, but it's not being as challenging as other organizations. In this case, I'll give you a just incremental change example and then more innovation example. So in the incremental side, as all the nurses in all the hospitals, especially in US, has been struggle with really simple things as communicating with the family of the patients. So by having standards in terms of their patient care and having all their processes already in place, I have seen them make really rapid change in their processes in order to adapt. They started by calling the families. That will take too much time, that they need to care for the patients. So, and they keep evolving their processes and keep expanding those processes and standardizing across quickly, that help them navigate through those challenges. So that's one. The other one, which is interesting for me, is before last year, we were not just telemedicine was not that sexy, right? So telemedicine is something that you did not do it that much. And it's an innovation that has been there for already many years, but the adoption was not. And why the adoption was not? So I'm just keep thinking, so the external forces at this time force the hospitals and force the organizations really start looking for those to really to adapt those processes. As we went through the year, right now is sort of the normal. And why is sort of the normal? Because we have to really make, not only the innovation was there, but we never crossed the step of fully adopting that change.
Right,
So
right.
both of them. So those are two aspects that are very interesting for me, because I've been exposed to that. So I seen them, how organizations, in this case healthcare, that have good processes, were able to tweak their processes in a way that is, I mean, the speed of the change for them was enormous.
Yes, that's amazing. And I think that it's an interesting topic, talking about, whether innovation versus, I guess, more of a reactive approach, looking for what are the current pain points or problems, what are the fires that I need to put out. And I think everyone can relate to that challenge, because we've all got things in our lives that, will vie for our attention and will draw our attention, that the fires that need to be put out. But sometimes it does take our attention away from innovation. It takes our time away from creating the future. It takes away our time away from really important things. Because I guess from an organizational perspective, if you're not creating the future, if you're not innovating, someone else will, and there will come a time where you're going to have to play by their rules. If you're not creating the future, then you're going to be playing by someone else's rules. And I was watching a video the other day that was very interesting on LinkedIn, and it was these doctors that were able to do surgeries on patients on complete other ends of the world. I forget the terminology that it is specifically, but there's a robot that essentially is carrying out the surgery, but the doctor on the other side of the world, the surgeon on the other side of the world, he's actually controlling that robot and carrying that procedure. And I think it was just a small example. I think that actually just peeled a banana. The patient was a banana. They peeled it, and then the job of the surgeon was to stitch it back together again. But it was just so fascinating that, like, that is a radical change to a process. That is a process that is being changed, that now, we're no longer limited by time or space or anything like that. You could in the future, you could be treated by anyone in the world, pretty much. So I think innovation is such a huge part of BPM.
Yeah, and I think that innovation is really making meaningful change to your products, your processes, even your organization, because you can innovate in your organization to bring really new value to your customers. So the key is like new value to your customers. So in the example that you're doing, that you're telling, is bringing the new value of being able to be operated remotely. And in the case of telemedicine, which has been there for many years now, it's really you can see the advantages now. You don't need to go anywhere to have a consultation with your doctor. And in the future, hopefully we can have surgeries remotely as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And talking about, I guess, you've been working with a range of organizations, and you would have seen, I guess, different BPM maturity levels, different organizations that have adopted BPM and at various degrees as well. What are some of the most common objections to BPM as to why an organization either doesn't want to, I guess the things I've experienced or seen or heard has been that there's a lot of methodologies out there. You've got agile, you've got lean, and some people see them as competing, other people see them as complementary. So I guess talk to us about what are objections to BPM, and how would someone handle those objections? I guess what I'm talking about is internal employees, people within an organization. Maybe they're listening to this episode right now and they see the value in BPM, but the rest of their organization doesn't. How do they handle those objections, and what are some of those objections that might come up?
Yeah, so I see it in three perspectives. So I see it, the objections at the executive level. So at the executive level, it is, we don't have time for that. We don't have investment for that. While we're doing BPM, show me the benefits, and then just where we go with this. And in that case, as I was saying before, you really need to just really work with the executive level and show the linkages between their strategy versus what they need to deliver to the customers and how BPM will enable that. The other level that, the other challenge that I've seen is that at the practitioner level. So as you mentioned, depending of the maturity level of the organization, you're going to see different ways into bringing that competency of BPM to the organization. So,
Right.
so it's very critical that organizations that embark on the BPM journey, or Barter's journey, develop that competency. And depending on the size of the organization, the resources on that, you can go as little as just really starting with a small group, creating a community of practice, or creating a group of process-minded people that will maybe start with one section and apply different techniques to really develop or improve processes. Or in larger organizations that are a little bit more mature, you can really enable a center of excellence that generates those process pioneers through the organization, because you don't want one champion. You just want to make sure that as you deploy, not only supporting process owner, you are creating the structure to sustain that BPM. And as you work with the process owners and develop those cross-functional process owners, you need to be able to provide that capability to them and that support for them. So, so I will say that at the executive level is really the mindset and really the understanding of how the two connect. At the other perspective is at the practitioner level. And lastly, what I call maybe operational level is really you need to show results. Whatever you do, starting small or doing it in a large scale, you do need to show results, because at the end of the day, that's how you continue achieving excellence, right? So
Yes.
show it one project, then you another one, then the executive level start looking at, okay, you're really showing me, let me provide more resources for you. And that's how you grow in maturity.
Yes, right. And I guess looking towards the future now, so for organizations that have adopted BPM, or maybe there are organizations out there that haven't yet, but I guess looking to the next 2, 3, 5 years, and what the future looks like. And every organization will be starting off at a different point. Some will have all of their processes documented. Some will be embarking into or exploring robotic process automation, process mining, these new technologies coming out. Other organizations will still be getting the foundations in place, getting their processes documented and understood, and what are we actually doing. But what do you see the future of BPM looking like, and where do you feel like organizations should be spending their time, effort, and energy?
So it's my dream. So I look at short term and long term. So in organizations that maybe are starting in BPM, organizations that already have started, my hope will be to bring those organizations to what we call level 3
Right.
in the maturity scale. So a stage in a way that the organizations already have developed their processes, so they have improved their processes, you have process ownership in place, and you're actively managing your processes. So short term, if we can bring more organizations into at that level 3 on the maturity, BPM maturity scale, that will be fantastic and will make a big difference in many organizations.
Mm.
Long term, I hope that we can make more use of our technologies. We do have so many new technologies. It's exciting what is coming in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning, developing data sets that will fit that machine learning. So that can help us manage the organizational knowledge through that. And not only that, in the future will be beautiful if we can use artificial intelligence to help us in the business process analysis. Would be
Yes.
great if we have processes that actually help the process owner highlight where the gaps are happening
Right.
and pinpoint what needs to be done. So as we develop more data sets, if this happens, you should be looking at these. That will go a long ways. So long term, that would be fantastic if we can, if we see BPM going that way.
Mm. And I think the data sets, they're only going to fast track everything. They're only going to make BPM easier, with technology like process mining, for example, that can extract the data from your existing systems. It can look at the time codes, the timestamps, the activities, what's going on, and it can re-engineer that process from the data that you've already got. That can save months, if not years, of process documentation work. And then not only that, but then allows you to analyze those processes in real time. So how are the processes performing? How many outliers are there? How effective is this process? When looking at the customer journey, are the customers following our intended process, or is it confusing? Is it complicated for them? Are they taking much longer to make their way through the customer journey? Do we need to make some tweaks and changes? And you'll be able to identify all of that through the existing data that you've already got. So I think the future is very exciting when it comes to BPM.
It is, yeah, it is
Yeah.
absolutely, and I mean I can see the time in which that will greatly help healthcare as well. So,
Yes.
so it's pretty exciting indeed.
Yes, that's right. And for someone listening to this right now, that maybe this has been the first time that they've really looked in or started looking into BPM. Maybe they've heard of business process management, that they've heard other people talk about it. Maybe they've read an article or two, but this interview or this conversation is the first time that they're thinking, right, this is very valuable, and this could bring a lot of value to our organization and the work that we're doing. But where do they go now to learn more? Where would you encourage that person that wants to learn more about BPM? Where should they, what direction should they look in?
So first of all, you're doing a fantastic job by bringing together these communities. So I think that this is adding a lot of value to people that are already in this field and people that are new in this field. For people that they're starting learning about business process management and process-based management, as Roger will say, I will say that. For me, because I was kind of relearning the language, aligning the language with the industrial engineer. So I went the business process change by Paul Harmon is a great, fantastic book that is just one of the foundational books. So I would encourage people to just pick on those little classics books that actually give you directly a good knowledge about BPM. Another one that I keep very close to in terms of books. Another one that I keep very close to me is Roger's book, Reimaging Management. So I really encourage people to actually read that book. And the good thing on that one is that you can pick any chapter and learn more about it. If you're going to establish a center of excellence, it has a great information. So by going through the enablers, you'll pick up a lot of information. We do have great, fantastic leaders in this field. So,
Yes.
and they are providing constant information to us. So I encourage the people to look at BP Trends. That's a great source of articles if you're going to research and learn more specific. Our leaders in this field they're always providing webinars, providing information in LinkedIn. We're all linked, so there's a wealth of information on that. I maybe discourage people to really go on the web and look broadly, but just do a targeted studies on with the people, with the leaders of this field that already have a lot of great information for us.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Well, Lourdes, obviously we can only fit so much into a 35-minute conversation, but I know that the audience will be able to glean a lot from what we've been talking about today. And even if they go away and you've sparked one thought inside their mind, you've challenged their mindset. You've put one question into their mind that they're going to go back to their team or their organization and ask that question. I think that's a great value from this conversation. Is for people to take action, for people to learn from those that have been putting BPM into practice, but then being able to go away and make those small steps to improve what they're already doing or to just get started. So on behalf of the Process Pioneers community, I want to thank you for sitting down with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure for me to provide a little bit of my insights in terms of BPM. And absolutely, if anybody wants to reach out to any of us, feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions, I'd be glad. And this is my passion, so I'd be glad to help anybody.